We helped him save hundreds of thousands of dollars across his organization in cream cheese alone because he was a bagel place. So what we did is when we made this change, we trialed it at one location. And then because it worked in one location, we rolled it out. So you want to basically make sure that when we're doing things, we want to do small tests in small areas. It's kind of like, you want to shoot a rifle before you shoot a whole cannon at something, right? So you want to test it first, and then if it works, then we go to the next thing. Welcome back to the Restaurant Growth Accelerator. I am your host, Andrew Scott, multi-unit owner for almost 20 years. And with ownership, we help restaurant owners increase their sales, profitability, and help them have more freedom with their time and scale up to multiple locations and all that fun stuff. So let's dive into why most cost-cutting plans fail very, very quickly. So I'm going to talk about this a little bit because most people want to bring their costs down, especially as costs are going up. They're always trying to find a way to save money. And so this is just one of the things that constantly comes into people's heads. And this is what most people do that convinces them that it can't be done. And so I just want to talk through that a little bit because there are ways to do it smartly. That is not the way that most people do it. One of the things that I hear quite a bit is, Andrew, there's no way I can reduce my food cost. Andrew, there is no way that I can reduce my labor costs. I am as lean as it can go. And so to that, it's funny, the same people that come in and say that laugh all the way to the bank when we actually drop their prime cost by 10% of sales. They're like, oh my God, I can't believe it. I got my prime costs, down to 50% for the first time. Oh, I didn't think that was possible. Of course not. But that's what we help people do. And that's why our clients typically make, 15, 20, 25% profitability. So anyway. So here's what a lot of people do. They focus on making short-term moves or really aggressive moves. And you guys might be familiar with this. There's basically, it's like a diagram. It's like, I forget what it's called exactly, but it's like, in the center, there's the comfort zone. And then the next ring around that one, I think, is the learning zone. And then the next one after that is I forget the actual term for it, but we'll just call it the crazy zone. And basically, your comfort zone is way in the center. And so this is where your normal is. This is where, you're comfortable. And so we try and get into the learning zone, which is the next one out there. But if you make too many changes or they're too drastic of changes or we learn too many things, then it goes into the next zone. You basically get scared and start questioning, can I do this? And you get a whole bunch of fear, something goes wrong, and it sends you right back to the comfort zone, which forces you to regress from all the changes that you made. So an example of this is we had this one client and we were working on doing a price increase with them. And they badly needed a price increase. Literally, we always do like a market analysis of their area around and everyone else was like significantly above where they were. We're talking like 20, 30% for similar product. Actually, our client had a better product. Anyway, but all these other places were busier and they had higher prices. And so we had to deal with that. So we were doing this price increase. And so we advised, I think it was like a 5 or 6% increase. And we basically wanted to do a bunch of sequential increases like over the course of like every, 4 to 6 months, something like that, to get us on parity with where we should be, but to move it slow enough that we don't upset the apple cart. Because again, one of the things we're doing when we're doing price changes is we don't want to make it so high that it actually gets people to have a bunch of complaints or stuff like that. And here's the general rule of thumb: anything under 10%, people usually don't notice as much. More than 10% is where you'll start to get some people noticing and where you'll start to get some feedback on it. So anyway. So what happened is we advised like a 5 or 6% increase. Like let's say someone was charging $21 and we want to do a $21.99. Like that's an example of a change. It's something that like was imperceptible. People wouldn't really notice, but an extra dollar per customer makes a lot at the end of the month and at the end of the year. So we wanted to make that change. And so we did that. But then the client, instead of doing that, saw how much other people were charging and just like immediately went up to their prices, which was like $2 or $3 more on like everything across the board. And so sure enough, as soon as they made this change, their regulars noticed because it was a significant change. And so they were like, oh my God, I can't do that. Oh my God, like I have to change it back. And so they changed back to their other prices. And then they wouldn't even consider doing it properly because of the feedback they got from the initial time when they did it improperly. So there's a reason why we advised what we did, but the client didn't take her advice. So sometimes that happens. And then that was kind of the repercussion of it, right? So that's why, like, that's one example, like, oh, I need to make more money, right? I'm going to jack up my prices too high. And, the value doesn't increase with it. It's just the pricing goes up. And so then, yeah, like some of your regular customers that are price sensitive may notice, which is why we always advise that any one given time, typically under 10%, like 5 to 10% is a pretty normal range to do an increase. More than that, it is noticeable. So that's why we try to keep in that range so we can still do what we need to do, but we don't upset the apple cart when we're doing that. So that's an example. Or another one, which is where this one restaurant, this is actually a very common confusion because people think that their inventory is their food cost. And so like, okay, so let me explain this. This is one that our managers had a really hard time with until I beat it into their head. Unless you are using like a lot of fresh product that has like short expiry dates. Like I'll give you an example. Some things come in frozen. We were in a quick service, so like we made cookies came in frozen. So like if you bought an extra box of cookies, it would be a short-term spike in food cost. But like eventually over time, the cost of a cookie didn't really go up, right? Unless there's a whole lot of waste involved. Like you just, have a short-term spike in food cost, but then it gets used up over time. And so what they were always confused about is they were like, oh, if I just stop ordering, like if I can drop my inventory, my food costs will go down. I'm like, yeah, temporarily. And then you're going to have to order more, which is just going to actually make it the same as what it was. It's going to even out eventually, right?
Hey, real quick, if you're a multi-unit restaurant owner or you're looking to become one, I've identified the 3 deadliest mistakes that are killing most restaurants right now. And more importantly, I'll show you how to avoid these exact mistakes. Just grab my free copy of the Multi-Unit Restaurant Playbook by going and clicking on the link in the description below. Inside, you'll discover my proven system for building a restaurant empire that runs on autopilot and the mistakes you must avoid if you want to stay profitable and scalable. So get the free playbook and transform your business today.
The difference is obviously we want to make sure we don't have like an excess of inventory. Now that is something. So if you have inventory where, you're spoiling things and stuff like that, it's obviously, we want to have less than that. So anyway, well, what's so interesting is people are like, oh, I'm not going to order this week. I'm not going to order this order. We had 2 order days per week. So I'm just not going to order. And my food cost is going to go down. But then I had to place a larger order the next time, which is stupid. So this is one of the things people try and do to cut costs. I'm like, no, that actually doesn't change it. Like, that's actually not why your food costs are high. It's because we're actually using more food. And so like for us, it's like we were over portioning at that time. So I'm like, it's not what you order, because a lot of us like eventually will use it up for most products that we had. So it wasn't the inventory that was the thing for them. It was literally what's going out with every customer. It's going out with every sandwich that we serve. That was, the product. So with every one of them, like if we over portioned, like it was gone. Like we couldn't get that back. But like, hey, if, say we brought in a frozen product, it's still going to sit there. We're still going to use it. It's not going to go bad because it's frozen. So it wasn't that big of a deal. That's kind of what I had to get people to understand. Excuse me. So sometimes people will cut and then they're like, this doesn't work. I can't order less. And so they just stop trying to fix their food costs. So it's like, no, you just try to fix it in the wrong way. Or like labor scheduling is another one. What they do is like, oh my God, I need to cut my labor by, I need to cut the schedule by 10%. I need to take off 40 hours from the schedule. So I've seen people do this. This is interesting. So what they'll do is they'll go to every single day and they will just take off the same amount for every single day. Because, I need to take off, 40 hours. I'm just going to take an equal amount from every day. It's fine. Everyone's just going to deal with it. But obviously sales are different from every day. So like, taking that amount off on a Monday, severely impacted their Monday crew. It didn't really impact their weekend crew because they had quite a few staff on there anyway. So, realistically, what we actually need to do is cut costs in the right way. So if we want to reduce our scheduling, we actually have to go and say, okay, so we need to reduce it. So let's look at our labor costs on each of those days. Which one currently has the highest labor cost? Because here's the thing. I had this one store, one of my stores, that was slower on Sundays, but we still staffed like we were busier. So the manager that was at that location, I went in, I'm like, hey, so like, your costs on most days are fine. All we have to do, it was their Friday was low. Their Friday was like 12% labor or something. It was really, really low. And obviously, like, service wasn't good. And that's the day when we want service to be great because we have the most customers. So we want people to come back. So I was like, hey, so your labor on Sunday was like 50% and your labor on Friday is 12%. I was like, hey, crazy idea. Why don't we take like 10 hours from Sunday and move them to Friday? And, and so like that's a switch we made. And then, we ended up cutting a little bit from like Monday as well, or Tuesday or something like that. And we actually dropped all of our costs by doing that. But we also redistributed the labor according to where the sales were. And I've heard people like, oh, I just run the same schedule every week. So the amount of times I've heard that, by the nickel for every time I heard that. But that's how we get wonky labor, because they're super busy and they get complaints and staff are stressed. And then other days they just don't do anything because there's no business. They're just sitting down, twiddling their thumbs. I actually had a guy read a newspaper one time. Anyway, you wouldn't catch that now because there's very few newspapers. But back in the day, that was a good story. I'll have to tell that one sometime. Anyway, point is, people will make silly decisions and try and make either too many changes at once, and they will just do it blindly, and they will end up just reverting back to what they did before and say, oh, it didn't work. I tried cutting my schedule, but all the staff complained. So then they didn't try again. So there's a story. Probably the best way to explain this is, when I was earlier on in business, basically the whole scenario is that like I tried to put like little coupons on people's cars. So this guy was like, yeah, man, like this, it's how I got some new customers. I went around to people in the plaza, and I went around my area, and I did some little flyers and stuff like that. Yeah, and I get customers from it. And so I was all gung ho, and I'm like, yeah, man, I'm gonna go and do that. It's gonna be awesome. And so then a week later, I saw this guy, and he's like, yeah, man, so how did it go? And I'm like, well, I did get one guy because it rained right after I put it on his car, and I had to get his car detailed because the whole thing stuck to his window. So like, yeah, it's the only call I got. Like, it didn't work. Like, this is terrible. That actually happened, by the way. So if you're listening to this, the guy worked at the gym in one of the plazas in the west end of the city. And anyway, so if you're listening to this, still sorry about your car. Glad we got it fixed. Anyway, I was like, this doesn't work. This is stupid. I was all frustrated and stuff like that. He's like, oh, what was your test size? I was like, what do you mean? He's like, yeah, like how many did you do? I'm like, oh, I did like 50. Like, we got like no customers from it after I did 50 of them. And he's like, dude, like the minimum amount we do just as a test to test out like the creative and the images that are on there and the offers that are on there, like the minimum we do is like 5,000. And I was like, sorry, what? 5,000? And like, so sometimes we could be doing something and putting through the motions, but maybe we're just not doing it the right way. Maybe we're just not doing it at the volume that we should be doing. Because he's like, yeah, so like after we do, the 5,000, then we replicate that and do like 5,000 a week. So anyway, it becomes, when you start to look at it that way, it's very different. Anyway, we make these decisions and we make them short term because like I've had people say, Andrew, Facebook ads don't work. Well, here's the thing about Facebook ads. So there's a whole bunch of different parts to it, right? It is the image, right? So the image that could attract people or not. It could be the copy that's right by the button at the bottom, like that short little sentence. We call that headline. So that could be it. Or it could be like the whole main body text or the main body copy. That could not be converting. It could be that it's an image and not a video. It could be the targeting that you put on it as to where it's going to be displayed. It could be the amount of budget. Maybe just not enough people saw it. So there's all of these things that can be tweaked about it, but usually what people do is they'll put up one Facebook ad, boost it for like $25 and be like, Facebook ads don't work. Like, no, I'm pretty sure that there are hundreds of thousands, if not millions of businesses that generate leads and get new business on Facebook. So it definitely does work. What we've been able to rule out is that the way you did it did not work. And so that's the kind of thing that I want to make sure we understand, is that when we're doing things, we have to do it the right way. Because you can try and solve the problem, but you can still try and solve it the wrong way and still get a bad result. So we have to solve the right problem the right way. And so just in your business, this is kind of what I want you to think about is what decisions are you making right now that might be short term, that might be maybe too drastic of decisions that kind of forces you to then pull back and reevaluate. Then maybe you were doing the right things, it just wasn't the right way. Maybe it was too much at one time. There could be a lot of different variables in what you're doing. And so that's why a lot of these cost cutting plans, they don't work because they're too much at one time, or they're just like one size fits all. So you have to do it in the right way where you get the maximum benefit for the minimum downside risk. And that's how we typically make decisions is what can we do to have the biggest impact with the least amount of friction on the business, the least chance of it going wrong. And what can we do that's pretty easily reversible? Or how can we test it first before we go and roll it out everywhere? So actually an example of that, if you listen to the podcast from a few weeks ago where we were talking with Chris, point is he was a client and now he's a coach with us. But basically we helped him save, hundreds of thousands of dollars, from across his organization in cream cheese alone because he was a bagel place. And anyway, so what we did is when we made this change, we trialed it at one location. And then because it worked at one location, we rolled it out. So you want to basically make sure that when we're doing things, we want to do small tests in small areas. It's kind of like, you want to shoot a rifle before you shoot a whole cannon at something, right? So you want to test it first, and then if it works, then we go to the next thing. You don't want to just start with the big cannon as far as that goes. So awesome, guys. Hope this is helpful. And yeah, let me know if you have any questions. We'll see you on the next one.